magical ADHDers. It is I, Just Bose, your ADHD coach, coming to you to talk about dreams again. When you have a dream, when you have ADHD, and we're reading this book called The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. And last time we read about embracing your dreams. And today we're going to be talking about leaving your comfort zone to follow the dreams, because that is the next step. When you have a dream, after embracing it, then the next step is to start following it, which usually requires you to come out of your comfort zone in some way. So let's get into this chapter. Ordinary leaves his comfort zone. The next morning, Ordinary woke up at the usual time, but instead of reporting to his usual job, he packed his suitcase with his usual stuff. Then he added his journal and a bottle of permanent ink. Just before he closed the latch, he carefully placed his long white feather inside. Soon, Ordinary was walking away from the comfortable center of familiar, where almost every nobody lived. He was heading toward the border, where almost no nobodies ever went. Ordinary had never dared to walk this way before, but, like every nobody, he knew that the farther he walked away from the center of familiar, the less familiar things became. He also knew that most nobodies who tried to leave the comfort zone of familiar became so uncomfortable, they turned around and went home. Some were so glad to be back, they sat in their recliner for days, waiting for nothing to happen and sighing with relief. But Ordinary told himself he was different from most nobodies. He would pursue his dream no matter what. Brimming with anticipation, Ordinary whistled his new tune while he walked, and he dreamed about the great things he would accomplish. Life had never seemed so promising. So that's what it feels like, right? When you're getting out of your comfort zone, you're leaving something that feels so familiar, and you recognize that like a lot of people aren't going to take the path that you take because you're your own person. And you get to have your own experiences. So it's not going to be familiar. It's going to be out of the ordinary. It's going to be different. It's going to be scary, because anything worth doing in life is scary. Anything worth doing in life is scary. And we get to do those things scared. So Ordinary is off on his journey to doing the thing, and he's doing it. He's scared. He doesn't know what's going to happen. And that's part of the journey, right? Okay. So Ordinary hadn't gotten far, however, when he no longer felt like whistling. He couldn't say why, he just wasn't in the mood anymore. Then, as he walked further, he began to feel edgy. The scenery looked different, the leaves on the trees looked leafy in a different way. Now, when Ordinary thought about this dream, it looked different too. For this first time, he saw how pursuing it could cause him a lot of discomfort. He would have to do unfamiliar things in unfamiliar places, and he wouldn't have his box to watch. Then he had an even more disturbing thought. To do what he loved most, he would have to do what he most dreaded. Ordinary's mood quickly went from edgy to anxious. His steps began to slow, and he began to have big doubts about his big dream. What had he been thinking? He didn't have enough talent or skill to succeed at his dream. He was clearly unable to accomplish great things. What if he failed right in front of other nobodies? Worse, even if he could do the dream, he was clearly unworthy. Any nobody could see he didn't deserve to live his dream. He was just ordinary after all. Maybe the dream giver had meant to give the dream to some other nobody more noble than him. By now, each step was harder to take than the last. His anxiety grew into fear. Then up ahead, he saw a sign. It read, "Leaving the comfort zone of familiar, entering borderland." Now Ordinary felt sheer terror. Sweat poured off his forehead. He could barely breathe. He could hardly think. Then, just as he came to the sign, Ordinary hit an invisible wall of fear. He stopped, unable to take one more step. He dropped his suitcase and sat on it. Ooh, this is the spot that a lot of people come to over and over again. It's like, okay, I'm going to follow the dream. I'm going to get there. And now I'm terrified and overwhelmed and so anxious and I can't move. So I'm going to stay where I am, frozen in time, frozen, standing still, unable to move. If you've ever, there's like a scale of fear, right? If you think like you're in the green zone, you're in the yellow zone, you're in the red zone. I used to work at a camp where we would talk about that, especially with campers, because I was a coordinator. I was in charge of campers and counselors and stuff. But when you talk about this gauge of fear, we would talk about it with the kids, because if it's in the yellow zone, we're going to like push you to try it. But if it's your red zone, it's like sheer terror, like we're not going to push you to do it. And so gauging where you are in that fear gauge is important to understand how to move forward, because once you're in that full out panic, there's not much you can do. Now, I don't feel like Ordinary's in that state of actual red. I feel like he's on the verge of yellow to red, right? Where it could turn into this space of like, I can't move at all ever. But I feel like he paused right before that, which is an important thing to do, and is an important awareness to have when you're thinking about fear and where you are with it. The things that are uncomfortable in the yellow still means you can still move forward and do it anyways. The things that are green are not scary. The things in the green zone are things that you're familiar with. You've done them over and over again. It's like riding a bike. If you've learned to ride a bike, you can get back on a bike almost any time in your life and ride a bike again. It's not scary. But when you're in that yellow zone, it feels really uncomfortable. And a lot of people don't like to be uncomfortable. They don't know what to do with the uncomfort. And so it can lead to like standing still and being frozen. And that's what happens a lot of times when people are following their dreams and getting out of their comfort zone. They're like, I don't know if I can do this. And then there's all this imposter syndrome. We talked about feeling unworthy, right? So now we got some self-sabotage going on. Like, oh, I have this dream. I'm going to do this thing. Oh my gosh, this is really scary. Oh, I'm unworthy and I don't deserve it. Like, that's the spiral that happens so quickly. So let's see how Ordinary continues. Should he turn around, he wonders, or should he try to find a way to go on? Time passed, then he heard these words. Why are you stopping? Ordinary recognized the dream giver. I think I want to go back home, he said weakly. I'm not the right nobody to go after such a big dream. Yes, you are, said the dream giver. I made you to do this. But I don't think I can do this, he said. Yes, you can, and I will be with you. I will help you. That little voice could be your own, could be spirit, the universe, God, whatever it is that you believe in. But that little voice, I know you know what that is. You've heard it before. Because if you're in my space, you have that voice. It's a beautiful voice, and the more that you listen to it, not listen like doing the thing that it told you to do, but hearing it, the more that you'll be able to recognize it for what it is. And that's something that I've been practicing. When I'm talking to spirit, I have these conversations where I ask questions, and I'm getting clearer and clearer and clearer on when it's spirit talking versus when it's different parts of myself, or myself talking in my highest version of myself versus the fear talking. And getting clear on that is really, really a beautiful thing, and something I support my clients with all the time. Is learning how to differentiate those voices. Okay. Ordinary stayed where he was. He watched an unfamiliar bug crawl across the toe of his shoe. Strange birds flew by overhead. After a while, he stood and looked longingly toward the unknown. Somewhere out there was his big dream. But getting from here to there seemed way too hard. Then he looked longingly back toward familiar. He finally remembered all of his comforts. His usual job, his best friend, his recliner, his box. There was something wonderful about nothing happening. Ordinary picked up his suitcase and decided to take one step in that direction, just to see what it felt like. It felt better. Right away, his breathing came easier, so he took another step, just to see what that step could feel like. It felt even better. He went on. With every step back toward the middle of familiar, Ordinary grew more comfortable, but he quickly noticed he was also growing sad again. and he knew why. With each step he took, he was leaving his big dream farther behind. Then he heard the dream giver again. "Why are you going back?" he asked. Ordinary stopped. "Because I'm afraid. Leaving familiar feels too scary and too risky," he said. "Yes, it does." "But if I was supposed to do this big dream," he exclaimed, "then I'm sure I wouldn't feel so afraid." "Yes, you would," said the dream giver. "Every nobody does." Ordinary hung his head. He thought for a moment. "But you could take away the fear." "Please take the fear away," he begged. "If you don't, I can't go on." "Yes, you can," the dream giver said. "Take courage, Ordinary." And then he was gone. Fear is part of the process, and choosing your dream is part of the process. It's a very important part of your process, because if you don't choose the dream and it just falls into your lap, then you're not, later down the road, you're going to wonder if this is the thing that you actually want. But choosing it is part of the process. Like, there's a reason there's a whole book that's in parable form, because this process works the same for just about anybody. It looks a little different, and there's nuances that are different for every single person, but the overarching thing is the same. You have to move through the fear if you want to pursue the dream, because the big dream is scary. And oftentimes the self-sabotage and the not feeling worthy, those things come up. And they're really hard to move through. And it gets easier as you keep moving forward. But you have to move through that space of fear in order to get to something new. Okay. Ordinary saw his choice clearly now. He could either keep his comfort or his dream. That's an important choice. Can either keep his comfort or his dream. You can either keep your comfort or your dream, but you cannot keep both. But how do you take courage when you don't have any? Ordinary decided if his fear wasn't going to leave, he would have to go forward in spite of it. Still trembling, he picked up his suitcase, turned his back on familiar, and walked to the sign. And even though his fear kept growing, Ordinary shut his eyes and took a big step forward, right through the invisible wall of fear. And there he made a surprising discovery. On the other side of that single step, the exact one Ordinary didn't think he could take, he found that he had broken through his comfort zone. Now the wall of fear was behind him. He was free, and his dream was ahead. He began to whistle again as he walked on, his big dream beating brightly in his chest. That invisible wall of fear, again, that's part of the process, because when you step through it, you're able to look back and see that you did it. You were capable. It boosts your confidence to keep going toward your big dream, but you have to do that yourself. No one can force you through it. No one can take away your fear. No one is coming to save you or do it for you. You have to do this part by yourself, for yourself. And then you will look back and see that you did it. And you can, the joy that Ordinary is feeling that he can actually move forward allows him to be able to be in a mood to whistle again. It's like a really big deal. So Ordinary took out his journal and his long white feather, and he wrote down the truth about his comfort zone. It was hard to leave my comfort zone, but it would have been even harder to leave behind my dream, and I'm glad I didn't. I still don't feel worthy or able to do my dream, but the dream giver has promised to help me. Now I know a secret. I can take courage even when I feel afraid. My big dream was on the other side of that invisible wall of fear. I had to step through it. I didn't think I could, but I did. And taking courage, I say this all the time. Courage is not the absence of fear, but being scared and doing it anyways. Another word for courage is brave. It's something I have tattooed on my wrist for the very reason to remind myself to be brave, to take courage, to know that I get to move through the things scared to get to the things that I say that I want. And you magical ADHDers have such magical things to offer the world. And if you let the invisible wall of fear get in the way of you moving forward toward that dream, like, there is so much on the other side of that wall. There is so much on the other side of that wall. And you get to move through it in order to get to the other side, to that dream, toward your dream, because your dream is worth following and you are worthy of your dream. It's not by accident that you have this dream on your heart, that you want to do X, Y, and Z in the world. People are waiting for you to follow this dream so that they can benefit from your product or your service or your time or whatever, or your entertainment, the beautiful thing that you're creating, whatever it is that you're creating. People get to benefit from, and they're waiting for that, and they need that part of you. And you know this, and it's really easy to put so much pressure on yourself. But if you release that pressure and just recognize that this space is normal, the space of walking through the invisible wall of fear is a normal thing in order to take steps toward your dream. If you understand when the moment is happening and name it, it is easier to walk through. Being able to name the invisible wall of fear is so powerful, because then you can walk through it and understand this is exactly what I'm moving through. And oftentimes we allow our overwhelm and the fear to of failure and unworthiness and all of these things that are spiraling in our brains and in our beings. It's hard to name that that's exactly where you're at. But if you could take a break, like Ordinary did, he sat down on a suitcase and paused and started to understand what was happening, that he was just terrified. Being able to name that allows you to own it, express it in whatever way you need to express it, and then be able to move through it. Oh, I love this book so much. I'm so excited to be talking about this with you all. So that's the end of chapter 2. The end of chapter 2. Ordinary leaves his comfort zone. So what is something in your comfort zone that you're having a hard time leaving? And why? Reflect on that. What in your comfort zone are you having a hard time leaving, and why? What is it that you're moving toward that you're scared of? Just kind of reflect on that. And then I would encourage you to do some body movement, because one of the things about fear is it gets stuck in our bodies. But if you could move around, go on a walk, wiggle your body, dance it out, it can help move the fear out, so that you can. It doesn't always move the fear completely out, but it can settle it so that it's not so expansive and unmoving, right? Because there are different types of fear. One of those being freeze fear, right? So if you're frozen, it's hard to actually move. But if you wiggle, you can't actually be frozen anymore. Your physical body can't be anymore. You might still feel the fear, but it's not going to paralyze you in a way that frozen fear can. So moving your body can really aid in the dissipation of some of that fear. Okay, I'm sending you so much love. I'm so excited to be going on this journey with you of learning to follow your dreams. And we'll be talking about chapter 3 next time. Please feel free to comment, reach out to me, tell me about the dream that you're pursuing or the comforts that you're having a hard time leaving. I would love to hear those in the comments. And if you're thinking about working with an ADHD coach, I would love to connect with you and talk to you more about that. Have a beautiful, magical, wonderful day.